Welcome, everyone. I am here with Jenny Grange of Prefect. She is an engineering manager, front end in parentheses, in your official title. Um, so, Jenny, you want to tell us a little bit about where you're coming from today and what you do at Prefect?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Jenny. I'm in the Lower East Side of Manhattan in New York City right now. And a prefect, as Jeff just mentioned, I am an engineering manager, which basically means that I lead our front end team. And front end involves anything that's the front user facing part. So we've got both the website and the UI or web app. And I think mostly today we'll be talking about the web app, the cloud UI, and also the Prefect UI.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So I know your team has grown a little bit recently. Who's new to the team?
Yeah, we have. So Nicola has moved over. The website used to be part of our go-to-market organization. We've now moved that into engineering. And so we've got the website being built as part of the engineering org. And then we have also had another internal transfer. Josh has moved over from our customer success team. He's been super excited about working on the UI, and now he's like taking on doing some exciting PRs to improve some of the links going through the web app. And then we've also had Brandon join us recently. He's an external hire. He's joining us as a staff engineer. And his title is really exciting. He's a design technologist, which means he has both a design background and has all of the exciting engineering skills. So he's coming in with a mindset of thinking about how we can make changes in the UI from a design perspective, but also thinking about, is this possible technically as well? Is it possible from an engineering point of view? And that I think is going to be most useful to us as we work on some of our data visualization work, which I can talk about a little bit later.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really growing. It's exciting to see that staffing up and yeah, having Brandon come, I gotta say, that seemed like a very hard position to fill with that skill set. And I'm super happy that we found someone and someone great. So very exciting to see that.
Yeah, we did a little rejig of the job description and really focused on data visualization. And I think that opened us up and helped us in finding the talent that we really needed.
Awesome. And one thing, Jenny, you've done super well is making little videos for things when the time comes up, whatever it is, you're just like, I'm going to make a video for this. And we saw that with this job position that we were looking for, right? You made a video. Was that just your idea to go and do that?
Actually, Andrew, our Python engineering manager, I think gets some credit there. He did it for one of his positions a little while back. And then when we were thinking about, okay, how do we really think about how we attract the right talent? Sarah, our recruiting, a senior recruiter, and I were like, okay, maybe we should do a video. But yes, I did get accused of being a advocate or an advertisement for Loom the other day, because I was saying to someone, oh, you should do a Loom video about it. And then in another meeting, I said, oh, we should do a Loom video about it. Super helpful for communication.
It is, and very easy to use. I'm a Loom convert too. Recently started doing it, and it's just, it can be a pain to set up video with sharing your screen, all kinds of things like that. And Loom makes it pretty easy, which is super nice.
Yeah, we used to, I mean, I still do sometimes, just a control function F5, which does it from the laptop, but then you've got this massive file, whereas Loom stores it for us. So anyway, I'll stop being an advert for Loom now.
It's cool. Maybe we can get a referral fee or something here.
Get some sponsorship.
Exactly. Today's live stream is brought to you by Loom. Yeah, feel free to chat in the comments, folks. If you have feelings about Loom, I'll try to get that in the chat. So we have folks on YouTube, we have folks on Twitch, and if you like one or the others, you can see us either location. Just a little plug here. Remember to subscribe, like, follow, share, and all those things, so you don't miss any of the action in the future. All right, so yeah, talking about the UI a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit maybe about what are some recent things that have been done that are exciting with the UI?
Yeah, again, I made a little video on some of these, but so some of the big features that we've added recently in the UI are enterprise features. So we've made it possible for someone coming into the UI to self-serve an organization. So they no longer have to go through sales. They can come in, go through the UI and get all of that functionality without having to go through sales. So it can all be done through the UI. So that was a big piece of work. We've also recently added custom roles. So on standard tiers, you can have an admin, a member, and a read-only user, I think. Might be a collaborator. And we've also added as an enterprise feature that users can say, okay, these are the scopes that I want a particular user to have. So those have been added. And then we've also added some smaller features, which is where I get a bit more excited, such as better filtering and the ability to save filters on the flow runs page. So one of the bits of feedback that we got was that the scheduled runs could spam that flow runs page if you had a schedule on the hundreds of scheduled runs. So it's very easy now to just switch to no scheduled runs. It's very easy to say, hey, I only care about runs with the tag Jenny on them, for example, and I can add that, and then it's just a one-click choice to go through. So it's a little bit like the projects we had in 1.0, but a little bit more complex in how you can build those features and those filters. Sorry.
Nice. Is that something do you want to bust out a screen and
do you want me to share it?
Make it share it? Yeah, let's go for it. That's the fun thing about UI things. It's all so pretty to look at. I feel like sometimes when you're just looking at the code, you're like, I got some code here. It looks like code, but when it's UI, you can like do things and things happen.
Okay, so this is my engineering product. So it's basically my play space in our staging environment. So you can see here, it's not too bad, but I've got quite a few scheduled runs that are taking up the top view. So we can now choose no scheduled, and they just disappear. So it sets the state filters for us. The other one that I have set is Dateflow 2. So that only shows runs from my Dateflow, which I've actually deleted all of the runs from. So I'll clear that one. If, for example, I only want to see runs from, let's say with a Jenny tag, because I know I've got one in there. I can now save that view, give it a name that helps me remember what it was. So that's now there as
wow, that's really cool.
One of our filters. We also have actually, should I talk about coming up yet, or do you want me to save that bit for later?
Let's save that for a thought. Can you hover over the flow run down there, the tag? Yeah, what's that called? Is there, do you know the name of when it, like, you hover and it does a little slide out to the side? It's a cool little animation we have. Just curious.
The transition, yeah, or the hover.
The hover.
Yes,
transition.
and this now lets you, actually, I'm not going to delete that one. I don't want to delete that one because that's my only tagged one. But I do want to delete some of these late ones because I don't want them anymore. The ones that I kicked off manually. So now I can just delete them.
Oh, that's super cool. I didn't even realize you could do that. There's so many exciting things happening. I'm learning so much. This is great.
Mariska gets a shout out for that. One of my team, she added them. I was like, hey, it'd be really cool if we could like bulk delete flow runs. And she went away and came back, and it's got the really cool little slide and transition. So. Oh,
that's awesome. Yeah, you've got a super team of folks over there. Cool. So, and this is all written in Vue. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, we use Vue 3 and TypeScript as our main stack.
Very cool. Yeah, and I'm not really in this space, but I know React is kind of the 3,000-pound gorilla, super popular framework, and Vue is loved by lots of folks, and also just like keeps getting more and more popular. Are you finding like when you're hiring someone or training someone, like Vue is nice and easy to find people for?
Great question. So what I think happens is developers who have worked in Vue love Vue. Mm-hmm. That said, React is the most frequently used framework. So, for example, when I joined Prefect, I had learned React. I had worked in React, and so when I got the code challenge, I was like, oh, and I went away and like studied some basic tutorials and did my my code challenge in Vue. quite a few of the engineers we've hired have come specifically to us because they really wanted to continue working in Vue.
Oh, wow.
And so we get that passion about the framework that I don't think you get in the same way for React. React might be more people use it, more people are like au fait with it, but they're not quite as excited to use it as the developers we have who love using Vue.
Oh, that's really interesting. Like kind of the tech stack driving some of the interest for hiring too. Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, people, if you're a front end person and you're watching here, and feel free to throw something in the chat about if you have feelings about Vue or any of these other things we're talking about here, or other questions about things.
And also, we would love, we're open source, so contributions. If anybody wants to work in Vue as well.
Awesome. So you got a bunch of exciting things that have happened here recently, and just most of these have just rolled out in the last couple of weeks, I think. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, there's a few more that I'm like, as we're talking, I'm like, oh, I should have shown this. The one other thing that I want to quickly show is again, based on user feedback, which is always my favorite way for us to add things, is we now have runs on the deployments and on the flows and on the work queues page as well. So we have upcoming runs, and runs could be seen as the same thing. Upcoming runs is actually what an agent would pull from, whereas runs is anything that has been run or that could be run. But for example, if the concurrency is blocked or if the queue is paused, upcoming runs wouldn't show them, but runs would. So that's the like nuanced difference between those two. Nice.
And I know, if you're not already if you're watching this and you're not in our community on Slack, encourage you to join our community. Prefect Slack has over 20,000 members, and we get lots of great feedback from people there. And I know, I think it was Brandon just posted a little survey kind of in Slack about what people were interested in on the deployments page. So check out the UI channel, I think it was, and give us your feedback there. That was cool.
And a similar one about what people are interested in seeing on this flow run list item as well. We spent we had an in-person get together of the UI team last week. Was it only last week? It was, wasn't it? Where we thought about some of the small changes that we'd like to make, but that could have big user impact. And one of them was like improving links from place to place. And that kicked Brandon off thinking about, let's just share his link, what we need to show here and what's most useful. And we all had opinions, and then he did the survey and it came back completely differently to not completely differently, but it was interesting because it wasn't exactly what we thought people would want. So yeah, it was a very useful survey.
That's so great. Getting that customer feedback, user feedback is so great, right? The mantra, you're not your target market, and is just can't be emphasized enough. That's really great to get that feedback. So anything else on things that are recent new additions you want to talk about, Jenny, or do you want to transition to things that are coming up the pipeline?
Let's do things that are coming up the pipeline, and I'm actually going to link them with one thing, which is back to work queues. So one thing that we've added, which is again small change, but I think is super useful, is this late runs badge here. And what that does is it shows if a work queue has a problem, really, because if it's got late runs but it's on, something's not working there. So it might be that there's a concurrency block, or it might be that there's no agent polling it. I'm pretty sure here I don't have my agent switched on right now. It's a local agent, so that's why it's not running. But one thing that we have coming down the pipeline is we're thinking about how we show if an agent has polled the work queue as well. That's a bit of feedback we've had from lots of people, is they want more information about whether an agent is actively working. So we're thinking about how we might show that information on that work queue page.
Interesting. So how to show what's going on with the work queue? We'll have a little bit more insight into what's happening maybe with the agents kind of at the same time. And that's a pretty something that can be done in relatively next couple months kind of timeline, maybe is what you're thinking there.
So there's a difference between sort of like a all of the agent information, which is something we don't collect at the moment. So it's not something that we can add very easily.
Right.
And there's also like, hey, we know that something has asked for the information about what these runs are, and we know it wasn't the UI, because we can add the UI headers. So the UI is also pulling that thing just to see what's coming up in that upcoming runs tab. But we can then also say, hey, something else has also asked for what runs it should be running. And so we can say, oh, in the last 20 seconds, something has polled for this. Or in the last 10 minutes, nothing has polled for this, which might actually be the more useful information.
That absence. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. But I can imagine both scenarios potentially. Cool. What other exciting things are on the drawing board these days?
Okay, well, this one I can demo a little bit more. This one again is a smaller change, but I think super exciting. Is improved filtering on the flows page and the deployments page. So up until recently, in fact, actually in the current cloud, this one is our, as I said, our staging environment. You can search deployments just by their name, but a lot of people have told us that they want to be able to search their deployments by the flow name. So now, instead of having to give your deployments names that reflect what the flow is, you can use the little drop down here and say, okay, I want to see all of the deployments that my Dateflow 2 flow has. So that's a nice little addition. And then we can also switch how things are sorted. So we've got alphabetical or when they were created, which means you see your most recent up at the top. Nice. Coming down the pipeline is the ability to paginate this table. So if you have more than 200 deployments, you'll be able to skip through and see those future ones. Same with blocks and flows too.
Very cool. So this is a staging environment here. So if someone's either using the Orion server themselves or on cloud, they're seeing something that's roughly the same as this right now. Is that fair to say?
Yes, this is like what's going to be released in the next few days, basically.
Okay. Cool.
This is like where we test and do our QA, and make sure everything's working before we put it out in the world.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Cool. So when you're, this is a question. Just curious about when you're thinking about how to release things and update things. Like, how do you think about that in terms of keeping things in sync and working with our other release schedule? We release a lot of things very, very frequently, at least once a week, usually, with the open source. Like, how do you think about that?
Okay, so there's two different repos for the UI. There's the open source and the cloud. The open source actually gets released with the Python package, so it's part of that release. And the cloud UI we can release ourselves. It's a much more simple release process. We only have to think about what's in the UI. We try to do both of them at least once a week. The cloud UI often gets done multiple times a week. And they're both fed from the one component library. So often the changes that we make get done in the component library and fed to both. So it's a case of like updating the package. Again, it's another package. So the UI package goes into the Prefect repo, which then gets put into the Python package, and it's all released that way. In terms of keeping in sync, lots of communication. We have our releases channel. We make sure that if we're releasing something, we post in there just to make sure everybody's got a heads up of what's going on. And in terms of what we're building, again, lots of coordination and communication. And we can speak in more detail about that if you want to, or we can move on to whatever your next question was.
Yeah, we could go either way. If you have more things you want to share there, that's yeah. I think that's interesting because you have to work. You have your own team of folks, and you have to interface with a lot of other teams who are doing back-end work and just general development work. How do you keep that all organized?
So for big feature work, for example, some of the stuff that I've mentioned, like the self-serve organizations, that is like it's across the stack. So for that, we have a roadmap and we think about who's going to be working on those, talk very closely with product, work in collaboration with whoever's taking that on from the back end. For smaller items, we have our own backlog board, which items from the Prefect repo created by our users, or also internal tickets that are created, or possibly issues that are raised in Slack that don't end up in a ticket but need urgent attention, get put onto that board. And that's how we track the work in terms of who's working on it, who wants to work on it, and what's in progress and what needs attention.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Makes sense. What about other features? Are there other things with visualizations we're thinking about, or other topics?
Yeah, no, I said I'd talk about Brandon and visualizations a little bit later. So yeah, that's another thing that's up and coming is, again, based on feedback, a DAG view is the next thing that we're working on in terms of visualization. So we currently have the radar view, and I'll quickly pull up a radar view just so we all know what I'm talking about. Although the flows I've got in here are not great examples for radar because they're all a bit simple. See what charcoal alligator's got. So yeah, here we go. This is the radar view. So you can see that this one just has the one task, and it comes comes from the flow run into the task run. Let me see if there's a better one than that one though, because that really isn't a great example. Okay, we've got two task runs on this one. Again, not bad.
That's more exciting.
Slightly more exciting. And these ones aren't dependent tasks. If they were dependent tasks, you would have sleep task feeding into signal task. So there's a little bit of a schematic here, but what we've heard is that users want something that's a bit more of a traditional DAG view, a little bit more like the schematic that we had in Cloud One. Mm-hmm. And so that is the next thing that we're going to be working on in terms of visualization, is how do we give that slightly more traditional DAG view, but have it complement radar rather than just being a straightforward, like, two things doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and for folks who are thinking about this, it might seem like, just make a little DAG. It's what could be tricky about it. You have one in version 1, but it's version 2. Actually, it's quite a bit trickier because we don't have to have directed acyclic graph
exactly
things, right? Like it's we don't have a restriction of the DAG here, so that makes it more challenging to think about how to visualize something or check if it's possible.
Yeah.
Even.
That's the thing. It's like, how do we know before we try to build it that we can build it? Sounds, again, like you said, it's like, yeah, it's just build the thing. It sounds simple, but it gets complex.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to see how things develop there and in the coming weeks and months. Cool. Any other topics of interest that you'd like to talk about, Jenny?
I think the only other thing that we discussed briefly when we were thinking about this was 1 versus 2, mm-hmm. And the 1.0 UI versus the 2.0 UI. And I was saying that, like, one of our goals right now is to make sure that we have all the functionality that we had in 1 in 2, or at least all of the use cases covered. It's not going to be a 1-for-1 like equivalent, mm-hmm. But all of the things that you could do with 1 should be possible in 2. Some of those, they might not, like I said, they might not be the exact way that you did them in 1, but mm-hmm. thinking about how we make sure that users of 1.0 are excited to move over to 2.0. And so that's like our guiding star right now in the UI team, is making sure that everybody's excited about the 2.0 UI. Yeah.
It's I feel like we're getting close. We've got a lot of things that are, already. So I was teaching the past couple weeks our PAC course, our Prefect Associate Certification course, and we had someone there who said, "Oh wow, 2 is so cool. It's faster than 1. It can do this better. So many nice features." It's just an education thing a lot of times for folks to think about. Okay, I know how to do something in 1. How do I think about it in a little bit different world of 2, but very similar in a lot of ways. So it's exciting to watch us develop and even surpass what we can do with 1 in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the thing. It's like, we're focused on, okay, what do we need to do to make sure we've got that? But there's also already so much more that you can do in 2 that you can't do in 1. And that's where it gets super exciting. And also like you said, it's so much faster. And it's so much cleaner from a UI point of view as well. I was saying, like, the 1.0 UI, it was kind of like just a little bit like, okay, we need this, we'll just build it. I feel like using this color today, so I'm just going to use that color. I'm going to use some pink. I like pink, so see in 1.0 there's lots of pink. And we had feedback of like, oh, it's such a happy amalgamation of colors. It's like,
That's a backhanded compliment there.
Two, we've been a lot more thoughtful about the design. We have product managers, we have a product team thinking about how it should work. We've got more design input in terms of like what users should want, what the UX of an experience should be. So it feels a lot more thought out for me as well, which I think is really key.
Yeah, nice and clean and good user experience at the end of the day is absolutely the goal, and got lots and lots of functionality coming. So it's exciting. It's very cool to watch it happen. So kudos to you and your team.
Thank you. Well, kudos to my team. I just kind of like, think about what we're doing. They build it.
Yeah, you do.
I build the fun bits, but they do the real building.
You have a great team, but don't downplay it. I know it takes a lot of work to get it all to happen. So it's awesome. And thank you for coming on to talk about it today. Hopefully everyone who's tuned in has enjoyed it. If you have other questions, you can always hit us up in community Slack.
Yeah.
And we'll keep our eye out for more exciting innovations. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in. See ya.